Hey everybody, welcome to a very spooky club chat for this haunted month of October. I'm Sam.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we're going to talk about the gothest shit ever, Soul Eater.
It's that good shit. That good Halloween show.
It really is, such a strong aesthetic. They aren't even trying to hide what they're about. You really gotta respect that it decided to be Halloween-y and creepy in this really lighthearted way, and then it stuck to that.
Soul Eater is essentially a love letter to horror and Halloween and all of its creepy and crawly, and I mean, there's no better anime, manga, just property in general to talk about during this beautiful holy Halloween month.
There really isn't, and I mean, it's something that both Kyle and I have enjoyed for a really long time. I know both of us, when we were younger, we watched it. I know a lot of people in the greater anime video game community. It's something they experienced growing up, and it's something that, even though it's not one of the more enduring big three type of things, it's something everybody kind of knows about and has varying levels of fondness for. But today we're going to specifically talk about the differences between the anime and manga, because there is a whole lot more going on than a lot of people know.
So I didn't really know about the manga for a long time. I wasn't aware that there were such major differences. When I initially went into Soul Eater, I went in blind, and when Sam eventually explained to me her thoughts on the anime and sort of the differences between the two, it became very clear that I was missing out on a lot. So I feel like digging into that and sort of comparing the two, contrasting the differences, it'll lead to a very interesting conversation.
You say explaining my thoughts, but you're kind of giving me too much credit there, because what probably happened was, I don't know, 2 years ago when we first had this conversation, I probably just started complaining and screaming about how much I hate the anime's ending.
Your opinions are valid. I'll agree with you in certain points. I do have other points, though, that I need to contest with, but at the end of the day, both sides have some validity to them.
My opinions are right.
Just putting out a spoiler warning, we will be going into some late-game stuff with the anime and some pretty mid-game stuff with the manga, so just letting you know that we will be covering that.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it relatively tame as far as spoilers go for the manga, just because we're assuming a lot of the people out there have read or have watched the anime, but not a whole lot have read the manga. So we might talk about some of the events, some of the stuff that we think is really cool and that might pique your attention, and urge you to open up one of those cool mangas and get the real details. But for the most part, just watch out for endgame anime spoilers and some pretty vague stuff about the manga.
Alright, so we should probably start off at the beginning, talk about just sort of generally how that adaptation is faithful to the manga kind of early on, and some smaller changes that might have been made. I do know that there's actually a few smaller lore things that get changed in the anime, specifically with regards to the Kishin egg situation. I know that the anime did go ahead and say that all of the evil humans and monsters that the kids of the DWMA go after and hunt, all of them end up eating human souls, and that's what corrupt their souls, whereas in the manga, it's more just, these are bad people, and death is go get them. These are criminals. Not all of them are necessarily people who eat human souls.
Yeah, and we definitely get a wider array of villains in the manga. We get just a whole lot of stuff going on, and now this is one place where Soul Eater as a property is a little weak. It fails sometimes with world building. Atsushi Okubo, the creator, has stated that he never really wanted to get caught up in the details. He more just wanted to write a manga that he could have a good time with. But I can see how it's easier for the anime to make this choice to kind of keep this linear path of, these are all the Kishin eggs. This is why they're going out to hunt these people. This is specifically the purpose. But now, me and Kyle have some different ranges of expertise here, in that Kyle is very familiar with the anime, whereas I haven't watched that all the way through in probably around 8 years. And I've read the entire manga multiple times, and my guilty pleasure is every year or so buying myself a few new issues of the manga itself.
Or all at once, in the case of last month.
Okay, yeah, so yes, last month I did buy 3 at a time. But that's because I hadn't bought any in literally years. I hadn't bought any since the last time we talked about Soul Eater, which was 2 years ago. But for the most part, the anime is almost a one-to-one translation of the manga. It is very faithful, it follows the same story beats. For quite a while, probably about half of the anime's run.
Yeah, about 3/4 of the way through, it's pretty faithful.
Yeah, and so I'd almost advise watching it just because that's a whole lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
But the major turning point is a little bit before the invade Baba Yaga's castle,
Yeah.
the arc in which they go after Arachne.
Mm-hmm.
And now, Kyle, you just recently watched all of the anime and then started reading the manga. Do you want to kind of get into the details of where things exactly shift?
I'd love to. So the actual first major shifting point is kind of entirely encapsulated within the character of Joe Budataki. He is, and I guess I should probably preface the whole discussion of why the anime and the manga do have these major differences. The anime it started and finished its run between like 2008 and 2009, and around that time the manga had just finished up the invasion of Baba Yaga Castle, those chapters. So because of what they had to work with, the anime kind of had to forge its own ending. There was only so much that they had, and they kind of had to make up certain story elements with the characters and the plot that they had going on at the time. So obviously, like, there are some bits that might feel a bit rushed or that feel a little convoluted when compared to something that had a little bit more room to move around and expand on things like the manga. But I feel like it actually did a pretty decent job of finishing up with what it had. And the actual first point where you can start to see this new anime exclusive narrative start forming is when Joe Budataki comes to Death City. In the manga, he's like internal affairs. He has this like incredibly strong soul perception, and so they want him to come in and check with all of the staff members at the DWMA to check like who's a traitor or something along those lines. But in the anime, he is there to help push this sort of like magic tool subplot that they have going on, specifically focused around Abon.
Yes, so, and kind of a recap for anybody who is getting a bit lost, because I mean, it's been a long time since Soul Eater came out.
Mm-hmm.
The whole magic tool started with this quest to get this thing called Brew, which is kind of an ill-defined magical instrument that allows different abilities and crafting. It's truly the Minecraft crafting table of the Soul Eater universe.
And it's even a little cube, so it's perfect. Brew is actually the perfect thing for this anime to kind of take liberties with, because early on in the actual like fight for Brew, its purpose and its use is so ill-defined. It's just a powerful magic item that everybody wants to have their hands on, so it gets kind of tossed around a bit. It's used as a bargaining chip, but we never know what it does. And so because of that, the anime kind of gets to take some liberties with that as well, which I'll get into in a little bit. But what we do know from the anime and the manga at that specific point is that there is an incredibly powerful sorcerer named Abon who is responsible for making these magic tools. And so in the manga, it's kind of like he's made a few things. We get to hear from him and see some different things that he's created kind of early on, but we don't really get much until a little bit later. Whereas in the anime, they decide to take that Abon stuff, those little teases early on, and give them a pretty solid payoff in the form of this big build-up towards some giant magic tool-related solution to all of the problems they've been having.
Yeah, and as much as I, quite frankly, hate the anime's ending, I do have to say that they were clever in using what they had on the table, and they did kind of, in some ways, pick the best route to end things out, following those magical weapons that were really hinted about as this big mystery. And I have to say that, in some ways, it did give more of a payoff to those story threads than the manga ever does.
But going on Medusa actually has a very, very different role in the anime compared to the one that she had in the manga, specifically with regards to the assault on Baba Yaga Castle. In the manga, after Medusa is essentially killed, quote-unquote, by Stein, she comes back, taking the body of a young girl named Rachel, who lives in Death City, and so we get this, like, little girl Medusa who comes to the DWMA and wants to strike a deal with Lord Death, mostly using Brew as a bargaining chip to kind of get what she wants. And specifically, in the manga, she asks to lead the operation to take down Arachne and arachnophobia, And essentially, yeah, she just wants to oversee that operation, and she wants it to be kind of a small-scale thing.
Yes, and it really actually becomes very interesting that we get Medusa as this captain to a platoon of DWMA students. And Baba Yaga's castle in the manga is very, very interesting in that it has so many different pieces going on at once, and we actually get to see a whole lot of some of the background characters, specifically Kilik and Ox, take major roles in the manga.
As well, we also kind of get to see, like, Medusa kind of playing a major role in the, you know, like, the primary assault against Arachne. And so that's pretty big stuff. Like, you're taking down a major antagonist for that arc, but it also leads into future stuff, which the anime wouldn't have time to kind of develop, and it would have left a lot of loose threads with regards to Medusa. So, in the anime, what they end up doing is, after she sort of uses Brew as the bargaining chip and wants to strike a deal with Lord Death, she just kind of says, "Alright, now let me go. I want to walk free," which is kind of convoluted in that she reveals herself to Lord Death to give Lord Death Brew, and then says, "Alright, now I want to go." And then she kind of just leaves to go to some hideout she has in the mountains somewhere, whatever. But in a weird, like, backwards way, she kind of lures Stein out to where she is, like, by kind of teasing him a little bit. He's already been coaxed into madness by Krona doing that shady thing with Marie, but it's like this specific moment that's like, oh, you should probably come out and check out my lair. You lose yourself in madness. It'll be great. It's like kind of tepid. I have mixed feelings about it, but they had to work with Medusa as they had her, so. Yeah,
they couldn't really give her that bigger part just because Baba Yaga's castle is a major midpoint in Soul Eater manga, but it is kind of the climax in Soul Eater the anime. But I do want to get into something a little spoilery for the manga here, in that Baba Yaga, one of those moving parts, is the setup for kind of diving into the relationship between witches and the DWMA more.
Yeah.
And how specifically, earlier on there is a list of 3 witches hiding out in Death City, given to Shinigami. And basically this is part of Medusa's plan. This is part of her bargaining. Basically, how she gets Death to allow her to not only lead this mission of some of the best students that the DWA has, but also be allowed to walk free and to be free despite being this basically huge evil villain in canon and in that universe, is she basically outs these 3 witches who are potential spies for arachnophobia. And one of them, I'm going to keep this relatively vague, one of them is a student and is a character that we know. And so that, of course, changes the entire landscape of this whole arc of Invade Baba Yaga's castle, just because it puts so much more on the line. It opens a lot of these characters up for more development, and it really kind of pulls some punches that no one would have expected previously.
There's a lot of, like, interesting, like, I'll admit it, I have a very soft spot for the anime because it's obviously my first version of Soul Eater that I've kind of absorbed, so that's kind of where my bias lies. But reading the manga, I see that there's a lot more going on, and I can really appreciate the stuff that it does. So, you know, like, I'll sing the graces of the anime. I'm not going to say that it's trash, because it does have a lot of very good things going on, but at the same time, it's definitely worth reading the manga.
If there's one thing I want from this video, it's to convince one person out there to read the manga, just because it's such a good time. It really is, and the character writing just gets better and better, the art just gets better and better. It really is a joy to see how it unfolds and how the author grows and creates these very deep and interesting characters. And again, in Baba Yaga's castle, how we have all these moving parts. One of them is an arc with Black Star and his second battle with Mifune.
Mm-hmm.
Who of course is there because arachnophobia has basically kidnapped Angela. It's a very, like, passive kidnapping where it's, you're just gonna come with us, and that's the best thing you can do if you want Angela to stay safe, which that's always Mifune's priority.
Mm-hmm.
But that battle is of course featured in the anime as well, though because of some earlier developments as well as the differences in that battle between the anime and the manga, it is so much more impactful, and it leaves so much more of a deep, I want to say, wound on the heart. But the way it develops the characters within just this one battle is phenomenal, and it's one of the fight scenes that I will never forget.
Yeah, no, the Mifune versus Black Star fight is... I mean, it's super solid. It's amazing. I loved it. I love Blackstar as a character, so getting to see just the level of detail and intensity in that fight in the manga it was really captivating. So I'm a huge fan of that version. At the same time, I do understand that in the anime they didn't get the chance to there's a moment where I think Blackstar and Tsubaki go back to Japan and Tsubaki lets Blackstar stay at her parents' place, and it's this sort of side offshoot thing where Blackstar gets this development and he kind of figures his stuff out. He decides which path he wants to take and all that stuff. It's a whole thing. And in the anime, they didn't get the time to kind of have that development in an offshoot, tiny part of an episode. Rather, they have to have that development all take place in that battle. So the entire scope of the Blackstar versus Mifune fight is completely different in the anime, in that Blackstar goes into it with kind of malicious intentions. He's got that, he's got the look in his eyes. He's following the path of the demon, and it's all this build up to, oh, Blackstar, your motivations are wrong, and you're going to be just like your father, and you're evil, and yada yada yada. So they have to create that moment of oh, Blackstar's figuring his stuff out right there in the middle of the fight. It's obviously it's a bit rushed. I do appreciate though that they did include a lot of moments from in the Enchanted Sword. There were in the manga there were proper scenes where Blackstar interacts with Masamune, and they have this whole thoughtful interaction, and Blackstar talks about his resolve and all that stuff, his motivations, and how he wants to surpass God, and how he'll carry the weight of all of these fallen soldiers on his shoulders. There's a moment like that in the manga that's really, really profound, and they managed to include little snippets of it in the anime, and I do appreciate that they went that far, because they completely went off the rails with the fight that they were doing, but including little bits of the manga that are semi-faithful allows that fight to have at least some weight to it.
Yeah, and that's really important, and as much as I harp on the anime, it does try with what it's given, and I don't like the final result, but, its hands were kind of tied. I do want to kind of shift into the ending of the anime versus where the manga goes on.
Yeah.
And so one differentiation that I want to make, one thing that I want to point out is, in the anime, the Kishin Asura is within Baba Yaga's castle with Arachne. That is completely untrue of the manga. The Kishin is off doing his own thing. He is completely uninvolved.
Yeah, no, there's a point in the anime where I forget how she finds out where the Kishin is. It's probably some whatever explanation, but at some point Arachne discovers where the Kishin's been hiding, and so she goes and she gets Ashura, and he just kind of chills out at Baba Yaga for a while, and I guess that's what kind of pushes the final battle to be this giant grand thing. It completely shifts from what the manga was trying to do with this smaller scale operation with just a few operatives from the DWMA. Instead, the anime just goes full out, and it creates a proper war of the DWMA versus arachnophobia. And while that's directly what I think Medusa actually offhandedly mentions when she's trying to coax Death into offering a few of his best students. She goes, well, you wouldn't want a full-on war with arachnophobia. You'd lose so many good soldiers. You'd lose so many good people in this fight. Whereas in the anime, they go, no, fuck it. We're gonna have a full-on battle.
It's kind of ironic that that's what they decide to do.
Yeah, it goes against that whole principle, but because Ashura's there and because this final confrontation is being built up at Baba Yaga Castle, it kind of needs to be this grandiose thing. You have to have all your players in the right place, so I definitely do understand the direction they took it, and so things do get really, really intense. So much so that, again, this whole magic tool subplot, which has been crazy built up. There's actually, I do want to do a little offshoot real quick. There's a mission that Kid goes on by himself, which is another substitute for the things that he would have done in Baba Yaga Castle in the manga, which they did not have time to develop or talk about. So they give him this dumb offshoot mission that's supposed to help build the magic tool subplot a little bit further. He gets a key that's got Abon's soul in it and all that dumb stuff. But there's a point where he fights against these automatons, which are clowns, and they're specifically recycled designs of a clown that Maka and Soul face off against in a chapter kind of around that point in the manga. There's a point where they have to face off against some clown that is just kind of hanging out, and it builds into stuff later on in the manga, but clearly they couldn't include it, so they actually just recycled the design and made it this weird robot that Abon made. And I don't know, it's nice that they got to use the design at least.
It's a fun little nod for sure. And it makes sense that they can't really dive into the clown because the clown kind of becomes this symbol for ultimate madness. And since they don't really get to dive deep into how the clown and that concept really dig their roots deep into every aspect of the world and start bringing about just like this sort of crazy apocalypse, they really can't include that, and so we do get that sort of filler, but again, the anime does have these really fun nods to the manga that you can appreciate quite a bit once you've read it and gone back through.
And so the magic tool subplot, it keeps building until finally they want to do this big reveal for what brew actually does. And in the manga, I believe it's supposedly a tool that intensifies wavelengths and makes your soul even stronger. And
well, that's one of its purposes. It also is stated that it's a tool for combining things.
Okay.
Which is kind of vague, and, you know, it kind of gets there as to what it's supposed to do, but it takes its sweet time.
Okay, so it has other purposes, but it does something different than what the anime decides to do, which the anime goes...
Oh no.
We have this magic tool that's ill-defined and we need it to serve some specific purpose to help fill in our story. And so they do it in the most Deus Ex Machina way in having brew. Its ultimate purpose is that it grants the wish of whatever the user desires. It gives them exactly what they want at that moment. So it's their perfect tool to just do whatever the fuck they want to finish off the story. Specifically, it allows Death to complete his dumb, stupid machine that turns the entirety of Death City into a giant robot.
Thanks, I hate it.
But you know what?
What?
You know what? The fight between Death City and Baba Yaga Castle is cool. I liked it. It's dumb, it was fun, and it was completely different.
I'll give you dumb fun, but I just want to say there are two things that make me just violently hate the anime adaptation of Soul Eater. And one, it is the whole giant mech battle. Neither of those castles are giant mechs, as it turns out. And two... oh boy, my most hated topic, the fact that they make Maka a scythe as well.
Yeah.
That is complete and utter bullshit. It makes no sense. And can I point something out? Can I just say something here?
Yeah.
Why do her scythes look like Soul's scythes? Why don't they look like, spirits?
They don't actually look like soul scythes.
Am I misremembering that?
They're like a weird mix. They're a dark brown, and they have kind of a zigzag triangle
that's what
print
I mean.
along the blade.
The zigzag triangles.
Yeah, it's like souls with the zigzag triangle, but it's like spirits in the color. So it's like a weird mix, and like, oh, it's like, look at these two major influences of the two guys in my life who I care about, or blah, 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 whatever. But yeah, no, there's a, obviously the fight against Baba Yaga Castle and Death City continues, and Ashura finally becomes a major threat, and the fight continues. All of this completely different than the manga. They've completely separated because, I mean, they had no choice but to at this point. They needed to finish everything. They needed to tie it up in a neat bow. So Black Star, Death the Kid, and Maka all face off against Ashura. And what I do appreciate is it does actually have more nods to the manga throughout the entire fight. There's small nods, little things, like at one point Black Star uses his like dumb shadow clone jutsu thing that he actually got in the weird advanced uncanny sword mode he got after his whole like resolution in Japan. Like, he got to use that weird ability.
Does Kid get a line of Sanzu connected?
Oh, he does 3.
He does all 3?
All at once.
They give...
Yeah.
Oh boy, Kyle, someday we're gonna come back to this conversation.
Yeah, but I do understand that there's implications there. I know that, like, from the one connecting in the manga, that was like, oh, that's a big thing. And that's why they do only one, because it was a big thing for that moment. But Kid literally just gets completely owned in, like, a second. And because he, quote-unquote, dies or whatever, I think he just gets, like, hurt really, really bad. For no reason, he gets this major power boost, and all the lines of Sanzu, the dumb lines in his hair, all connect, and he does this giant cannon that helps take down Ashura in the end. It's a dumb moment, but they took something from the manga. They were like, sure, why not? We can use this to sort of, like, show a development in our characters. They're stronger now than they ever started their journey at, so they can finally take down this giant malevolent force.
Alright, I'll give you that. I guess it's kinda cool that they have those nods.
Little things.
Aww.
And then obviously they have Maka summon
Don't say
Scythe.
it.
But it's it's confusing to me because I kind of made some sense of this. Like, it's not the stupidest thing that you would have someone who can be a Meister also be a weapon, because we see like Liz and Patty, they both can wield each other.
Yeah. And
they kind of are shown to be capable of being kind of like Meisters later on in the manga.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that peeves me about it is Maka only suddenly realizes that she has these scythe powers, like, oh, I can summon scythes and I can use them for battle and all that stuff. But 2, the only reason she's able to do this in this one tiny moment is, and it's the most confusing thing, is like this final confrontation between Ashura and Maka. It all hinges on the idea that Ashura doesn't feel pain anymore. He doesn't feel any fear, and he's completely shut off that side of his brain, so he can fight completely, like, full force without any hesitation, whereas Maka is like, oh, I'm a human, I'm afraid, and that makes me weak. So she becomes unconscious at one point, and she fights unconsciously, summoning the scythes to protect her. And it's the most like, but how? Why is this working now? Why is this? It's a complete Deus Ex Machina. They're just pulling it out of their asses because they wanted to do something cool for the final battle.
And that's why I hate it. I also hate that, like, Ashura is kind of a weird character, but them, like, having him eliminate his fear really defeats the purpose of his character.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna get too much into that just because spoilers, but I really don't appreciate that just last stretch of that battle. And it's why I'll never watch the anime again to that point. I might watch some of the earlier stuff, but never the ending, just because I see that ending and it spits at me, and it says, fuck you in particular, Sam.
You'll never watch it of your own volition.
You think you can force me to do that?
Why would I watch it again? I just watched it. But the way they do end things is, it's dumb, and it's in a shonen-ass way, but it's kind of nice. It's a nice lighthearted ending in that they kind of give it like a power of love type final victory against evil. Ashura's been going on and on about how fear and pain make humans weak, and that's why they'll never be able to beat him, because he's managed to like quench that, even though he had like little moments where I kind of have feelings for Arachne, and that makes me weak, so I'm gonna kill her.
We've all
blah,
been there.
blah, blah. We've all been there.
We all love Arachne.
It's true.
Big sexy.
Big sexy spider. But the way that they do actually have this final moment where Maka kind of realizes, oh, well, fear and pain are a human thing, but that's not going to stop me from beating you. I still have something. And everybody keeps going, Maka has something else other than her anti-magic wavelength, which was the huge thing that they wanted to hinge this like final confrontation on, this technique she learned from her mother, but it didn't work. So everyone goes, no, Maka has something else, something deep inside her. And they're like, everybody, even though they're all passed out or considered dead or something like that, they all go, no, Maka has something you'll never understand.
She has,
and it's bravery.
Courage. Ooh.
Courage. Ooh.
I think it's a fun ending. Oh, the courage part, yes.
Yeah.
Everything else, no. But, yeah, so, I mean, take it or leave it with the anime ending, I guess. It does have its appealing points. It does have its points of contention. I do want to shift to a bit of another subject here. Just talking about some of the places, in vague detail, of course, that the manga goes in an attempt to entice some people into it. Just because, again, Baba Yaga is the climax of the anime, but it is just the midpoint of the manga. And so after Baba Yaga, we actually see the world of Soul Eater expand quite a bit. And we have about 3 very defined arcs, and of course there are small subplots in between, but we have the Grigori arc, we have the Book of Iban arc, so we actually do get into a bit more about Iban as a character and what kind of his legacy is and his effect on the entire universe of Soul Eater. And then we also have the Dark Side of the Moon arc, which is the real climax, which I'm not going to talk about at all. But basically, if you just watch the anime, you're missing out on about half of the full story. And there's just some really bonkers, cool, and wild stuff that happens. And I would really encourage you to read it, because we generally stick with the same characters. We get like about 3 or 4 new major characters, and all of them are an absolute delight. If you've only seen the anime, you don't know what I'm talking about, but Gopher is my boy, and Gopher is my kid, and they're the best character ever, because that representation.
Exactly. It's a good show. It knows what it's doing. It's a good property, story, yada yada. So here's what I'll do to help kind of encourage people a little bit more, because that's a lot of manga to read. So you can kind of do what I did, which is if you don't want to read the entirety of the manga, which, I mean, understandable, it's a lot of reading. At the same time, don't starve yourself of that. Reading is good. It's good for your brain. If you want to kind of skip ahead a little bit and watch the anime up to a certain point, you can kind of watch it up until Joe Butataki gets introduced, and then you can read Volume 10, Chapter 38. That's sort of the point where I jumped on, and that was essentially the best possible place for me to jump into the story from where the anime had led me up to. That's where things start to get different, and that's a good point for you to start reading into.
Yeah, you're still gonna see some common threads of things that you'll be like, hey, this is exactly what happened in the anime. But in general, you'll notice very quickly that there are a whole lot more points of intrigue, points of just completely new ideas being introduced that weren't even brushed on in the anime. And it's really worth it because it's a dumb fun ending that the anime has, but it kind of dumbs down Soul Eater as a whole, whereas it gets a little more complicated and very interesting and I guess a lot deeper and more full of feeling and emotion when you start reading the manga.
I guess the best way to put it is, if you watched the anime and you just had this itch for more Soul Eater in your life, there's literally entire volumes of Soul Eater manga just waiting for you to come and get them.
It's out there, it's calling to you, and you're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna have a good time. You're gonna see some wild stuff. You're going to see characters flying who previously could not fly, but you know what? There's an explanation for that. You're going to see canon gender bends, and that is an entire plot point. You're going to see a giant dragon, and you're gonna see that more of those characters that you love, and you just read it. Please read it. You're gonna love it. Anyway, do we want to talk about, before we head out here, the cursed property?
I think we should. I think we should talk about the problem child in the Soul Eater universe, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Alright, I'll give us a little pitch here. So, I want to say it was 2013. Soul Eater was already well into its run. The creator decided to make a side manga, a spin-off of sorts, and it was called Soul Eater Not, and it was pretty much a slice of life taking place in the Soul Eater universe, and it's not very good.
It's not very
good.
Yeah,
it's not very good. Now, there's more to say about it, but before I get into some of the nitty-gritty, one of the major problems with Not is that it almost exists completely separate from the timeline of Soul Eater, while at the same time trying to fit in. The continuity just gets ruined if you look at the events of Soul Eater next to the events of Soul Eater Not, and what really is the final nail in the coffin is some of the later chapters of Soul Eater feature some of the minor characters of Soul Eater Not, and the timeline just completely makes no sense.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Specifically the final arc of Soul Eater includes, and it's more just cameos than everything else, but they decided to put some of the Soul Eater Not characters in there, and I understand that's a little cool, but just, now that the timelines are meshed together, nothing makes sense.
This is all new to me, by the way, folks. I am aghast. I hate that, because I hate the characters in Soul Eater Not. They're garbage. It's so bad. Can I talk about the anime?
Yeah,
can I talk
briefly.
About how I feel about the anime? Yeah. I don't like the anime because obviously it's a slice of life. It lets you see the Soul Eater universe in a whole new light, yada yada. If you want that, good for you. But it also is just Yuri baiting really bad animation garbage that I hate so much. If you didn't like things about the anime, how it, had some moments where things were a little bit stilted, which why would you? Bones did a great job of animating so many of these major fights. Don't watch Soul Eater Not because it's got some of the most garbage fight animation that you could ever ask for. I mean, why would you expect good fight animation in a slice of life anime? But don't go into it expecting more cool Soul Eater stuff. You're just going to be getting a slice of life with a weird Soul Eater colored coat of paint on it.
And
it's bad.
Everyone's gonna look really weirdly anime styled. It's gonna look really uncomfortable. And again, it's mostly about cute girls doing cute things, showing their titties, and Yuri baiting. It's not good. I never finished it because it just really doesn't have many redeeming factors. But, and now, here's a sucker punch for you all. I don't hate Soul Eater Not, and I decided to stop hating Soul Eater Not literally 2 days ago, because my most recent volume of Soul Eater that I had ordered from Amazon.com, thank you Lord Bezos, came in. And that was Soul Eater Volume 20. And now, here's a little fun fact as a person who buys the actual physical mangas. At the end of every single one, there is a little, like, omake, funny non sequitur called Atsuya. And it's a little scratchy comic made by the creator of Soul Eater that's kind of him making this comic of himself and some other strange characters in this little bar, all just doing silly things. And now, I get home from a con, and I'm getting home at like 2 a.m., and I open up this package, and I'm just flipping through, and I open to Atsuya, because I just like reading these things, they're fun. And I see that it's him talking about why he made Soul Eater not, and just humbly requesting that you read it, because he likes it a lot. And now the reason he made Soul Eater not, as I previously said, he never wanted to get too caught up in the details of the universe, he wanted to instead focus on the characters and focus on telling a fun story.
Mm-hmm.
He made Soul Eater not because he cares about that universe and he wanted to flesh it out more. He wanted to give people more details, but he just couldn't with the pace of the story he had already written along with the current story arcs they were in. And so he thought the best way to give fans this information as well as to let himself explore this world that he loved was Soul Eater not. And as much as I don't like the product, I can't hate him for that. And I have to understand that and I have to think, you know what? He tried. And we do get to see some more of the Soul Eater universe, and it's honestly kind of nice if you just take out the characters.
It's beautiful. It's really touching that you're willing to accept this product. I do want you to know, though, that you will be accepting Liz and Patty working at Death Bucks.
Yeah, no, I saw the maid cafe.
You will also be accepting another member of the Star Clan who inconspicuously managed to survive, and he's a cool anime boy with a star eye.
No.
And he has a star eye under one bang that's covering him up. So he's still alive. There's still another Star Clan member that Black Star doesn't know about. There's also, what else is it? Well, Shala Gorgon, the other Gorgon sister.
I like
she's
Shala.
a scorpion. She's alright. Her hair is a little bit weird,
but
her hair. You know, it's interesting.
Megane.
There's a lot there. There's just a lot, and I can't accept it. Effort was put in. There was a serious effort put into the work of expanding the universe, but it just didn't pay off.
Just didn't pay off, and it kind of ruins the timeline and raises a whole lot of questions that don't need to be answered. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us for this very spooky club chat. We hope you have a good Halloween, and if you don't have plans, you know what? You should turn on some of those first episodes of Soul Eaters, watch some magic pumpkins, see some mummies and zombies, and just have a good time. Walk down this memory lane with us, because you know what? Kyle and I have really enjoyed getting it back into it recently.
It's been good. It's perfect for the Halloween season, so if you want to get into the spirit of things, check it out. It's definitely worth your time.
And of course, read the manga. Please read the manga.
Yeah.
Alright, bye-bye everyone. Thank you so much for listening.
See ya.